Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and this is Great Big History. In our fourth episode of our History of Leadership course, we will do the personal leadership of nomadic horselords. So now we're starting to talk about history, or at least at this point, anthropology. But we're starting to talk about historical events. And what we have is nomadic hunter-gatherer groups. This is the most common human society in history. Humans are 5 million years old, and this is basically how people lived. They moved from place to place looking for food. Homo sapiens are, 200,000 years old, give or take? And they spent 90% of that, 95% of that, moving from place to place looking for food. So these societies are poor. They owned only what they could carry as they moved from place to place. And if you're carrying a child, if you're a mom carrying a child, you can carry even less. So these are poor societies. The second thing is they're communist. Now, that doesn't mean they're Stalinist or they're Marxian or they're the workers own the means of production. That's not what it means at all. This is the traditional form of communism where everyone contributes to their abilities and everyone receives what they need. It's the church pot luck. It's the public library. Those are socialist. Those are communist concepts. The church potluck. I have gone to many a potluck in the basement of a church, and I have never, in all of my time, ever had to open up my wallet and pay. And I always ate my fill and had plenty to drink. Water, fruit juice, cola, and everybody else did as well. So what did I do? Well, I picked people up and drove the elders to the potluck. I went and picked up food from other places. I did what I could do to contribute. And others did what they could do to contribute. Some people made cakes. Some people barbecued chickens. But everybody contributed. And somehow we all shared. We all ate. And nobody made a profit. Nobody charged anybody. That's communism, where there isn't a profit motive. Everyone contributes at what they're good at. So old people take care of kids, and young people go out and work and do strenuous labor with the strength of their back. And everyone receives what they need: food and shelter, affection and time. These are also small groups, about 500 people, maybe up to 1,000. They're people who know each other. They're close to each other. So when people say communism doesn't work, has never worked in history, it's actually the most common form of economic system humans live under. It's not Marxist, it's not Stalinist, it's not Mao. It's the traditional communal communist idea. That's Jesus and the 12 apostles and the disciples. That's plenty of societies. But my argument would be, for communism to work, you need a small society of poor people who have to rely on each other. In those societies where people know each other, people rely on each other, that's where communism can work. The moment a society gets wealthy, communism doesn't work anymore. But that's a whole different discussion. But we'll get there in like part 3 or part 2 of the class, where we talk about fascism and communism and democracies. So how do these communist community hunter-gatherer societies work? Well, let's talk about law. So people do bad things. People have always done bad things. People break the traditions of the group. Well, who represents the law? And the people who represent the law, the leaders of the legal establishment, are the old people, the elders. And how you would figure out what the punishment would be is an elder consensus. Everyone agrees on the punishment. Not everyone of all 500 people, but the oldest, most important, most respected members of society. They get together, the 5 or 8 or 10 of them, and they get together and they discuss it. And some may want a harsh punishment and some may want no punishment. And what they do is they sit and they eat and they discuss and they talk about the past and what the traditions are and what the rules are. That's why in Game of Thrones, when they're discussing the idea of Dothraki, the nomadic horse people's knowledge, it is known. It is known. Of course it is known. And that's how the traditions work. That's why it's the elders who matter. Their age equaled experience. They knew what the traditions were. They had lived through it. Even today, we like our judges older. We don't want 22-year-old judges. We want 62-year-old judges. Why? Because that age gives them knowledge, an understanding of traditions, an understanding of culture, an understanding of society, an understanding of what the law is and how it works. The second thing is consensus. So the first is age. So young people are not part of this. But the second thing is consensus. They agree. And the point of that is to keep the peace, to end conflict. That's actually the goal of all law. So every time we talk about the law, every time a leader shows up and wants to change the law or create law, the goal is to end conflict, or the goal is supposed to be to end conflict. If it's not to end conflict between the people who are hurt by whatever the law, whatever breakage, whatever problem has happened, there's two sides. There's the person who did the breaking and the person who was harmed. You need to end that conflict. This society relies on everybody. So the consensus keeps the peace. It keeps having vengeance, having escalating violence, and the whole point of this is survival. Survival forms an internal group leadership. So if the group survives, you'll have a small group of old people. That small group of old people, by their very age, and the fact that they know each other over a long period of time, become an internal group of leadership. Without writing, in a world that there is no written words, so you cannot pass on knowledge from one generation to the next in any other way but spoken. In a world without writing, age matters. Age becomes leadership. But the problem is the need for food creates competition with other groups. So if all this group did was live in one place and never move and never come into conflict with anybody, those old people could form a leadership group and stay leaders of the entire society, of all actions of the society. But that's not what happens. The need for food means people have to leave. And when they leave, when they move, they bump into other groups. And that's competition. What if two groups end up in the same valley looking for food? That's a problem. And old people are not necessarily the most helpful there. So what we need is the ability to make decisions to find food. Leadership now is to make decisions to find food. The politics, the diplomacy, the trade. We run into other groups. Whoever's going to negotiate with those other groups has to be able to do politics, diplomacy, and trade. Make a good deal. Be respected by the other group. And if peaceful means, politics, diplomacy, and trade, can't come to a decision, you might have to resolve to commit violence. So they need to be able to lead in warfare. So now, all of a sudden, we have a new job. So where our poor, nomadic, hunter-gatherer group has one group to keep internal peace, we need another leader capable of winning external peace, finding food and then holding it, keeping it, taking it from other groups. So we have to talk about nomadic warfare. Nomadic warfare is the complete eradication of competition. We are going to see this if we talk about the Mongols. We will see this about the Huns. This is what scares settled people so much. If you ever watched Mulan, you saw this. It's nomadic warfare is not about land. It's not about territory. It's about food. Consequently, whoever you run into is your competition. So you can't share food, because if you share food, that's less food for you, and you might starve. So if you get into a fight with another group, you have to destroy that group, because they will want to destroy you. So what they do is kill all the defeated men, because the men are a problem. The men cannot be guaranteed to be loyal. The men might revolt. They are another mouth to feed. And if they're another mouth to feed and they're not loyal, that's a problem. And so you just kill them. Just kill the defeated men. It solves all of those problems. The second is you marry the captured women off to victorious men. So if one tribe or one group destroys the other, they don't murder everybody. Even though I said the complete eradication of competition. But notice I said eradication of competition, not people. So yes, there is definitely murder. Kill the defeated men. But they also would take the defeated women and marry them off into their own tribe. Why? Why do this? Because childbirth was so deadly to women. So you need to replace the wives who die in childbirth. Maternal mortality now is less than 1%. And even in the United States, it's the highest in the industrialized world. It's awful in the United States, but it's still less than 1%. In nomadic peoples, it's somewhere between 10 and 14%. That's Russian roulette numbers. So women died all the time in childbirth, whether it was from infection later or the childbirth itself. Remember, nobody understands diseases. Nobody understands infections. Nobody understands biology. So the people who are helping a woman give birth are women who have given birth. That's, again, knowledge. There is no education. So it's just what people had gone through. But we're talking 10 to 14%. So there's always a need for more women to replace the women who have died. See Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones. She's sold off to a warlord, but she becomes a wife. She becomes then the Khaleesi. So these captured women are married off. They do become part of the tribe. And their children are legitimate children of the tribe. So there is the terribleness that they are now married off to a man who they do not want to be married to and do not want to have sex with. Now they do. So this is a non-consensual relationship in every way, shape, or form. But the positive, the way that it worked for these groups was, well, your husband's dead and you could be dead, but you're not. So we're going to make you part of our tribe. We're going to bring you in so that these women are not foreigners they will become they will become citizens, and their children will always be citizens. So trauma is very much part of the human condition. So the rule of the class is don't lose. And yet we will talk constantly about the destruction of people who lose. Children who are captured will be used as labor till they're old enough to be married off into the tribe. This is to keep them from revolting. Like an 8-year-old, you're not worried about revolting. An 18-year-old is a problem. But if that 18-year-old is now married off to a daughter of a warrior, they can be incorporated as a full member. This is kind of how indentured servitude worked. You took the person's labor for a number of years, in this case, about a decade, but then after that, they're no longer indentured. They're now a citizen of the group. And so this was the way, nomadic warfare was the way to constantly bring in new people, constantly reinvigorate the tribe. But because there's competition that might lead to warfare, and because warfare was so traumatic and destructive, it forms a kind of leadership, a necessity of leadership. And this leadership is personal. You had to lead by example and action. It is not institutional. There is no position called chief. There's Greg, and Greg is the chief. And that's different. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. Joe Biden was the president of the United States. There is a position separate from the person. Joe Biden is a man. Donald Trump is a man who happens to be president. These groups are the opposite. Greg is the chief. The chief is Greg. Khal Drogo. Khal Drogo is the chief. So all those powers that people assume the chief has, he has because it's him. So the powers are not defined by law and structure. They're defined by a person and the person's actions and the needs and the problems. Our little picture, a call, and this comes out of Sons of Anarchy. All right, a leader who cannot ride the motorcycle is no leader. A Carl who cannot ride the horse is no Carl. Right? You have to be able to perform the action of leadership. And so, how is a leader chosen? Well, you need a leader to lead you in war. You need a leader to lead by example and action. So automatically, old people are out. They did it. They're retired. They can't lead. You have a 70-year-old person who is so old, they call him old. So old Greg is 72 years old. He cannot lead you. He cannot do the hard work that's required to scout new valleys looking for food, to lead the charge into the battle. So it has to be by group consensus. Elders are going to be part of that. The women and wives are going to be part of it because their lives are very much in question here. We just talked about how a battle is lost. They're going to be married off to other people. They don't want that. So they're going to want to choose a good leader. The young men have a say because they're going to follow. They want a good leader. And so this requires a couple of different aspects. Kin. Who are you related to? Are you related? Are you the son or the brother of a great leader? Attila the Hun's brothers tried to take over. The Khaleesi is the wife. That was her right. She said, I was the wife of Khal Drogo. That gives me power. Now, originally, not that many people followed her, but that was her claim. I'm the wife. So we're going to talk about monarchies where the son is going to say, I'm the son. So that gives me a right. And uncles, the brothers of the king, see Hamlet, right? The brother of the king murders the king, takes over as king, marries the queen, takes over as king, pushes the son aside. So you need but if the brother wasn't the brother, if he was just some dude, then he's Macbeth. Macbeth is just a general. He's just a lord. And it never works out for Macbeth. He's got rebellions right from the very beginning. So you need the right kin. You have to be related to the leader. The second is you need charisma. People have to want to follow you. So even if you're the son, if nobody likes you, you're going to be passed over. You're going to be pushed aside. This is Fredo in the Godfather movies. He's the son. He's the second son. After Sonny's dead, he should be taken over. And he's pushed aside by Michael. And nobody really cares. Nobody really wants to follow Fredo. So you need to have charisma. People have to like you just by you being you. They have to want to do what you say when you say it. You have to have that little spark that people just like. And not everybody has it. Most people don't have it. And the third thing is moral fortitude. You have to be able to do what you say. You have to be able to back it up. You have to be able to walk the walk and do whatever the talk you're talking is. So that's moral fortitude. It's not just being a good person. You might not be a good person. But you have to be able to do. People have to be able to trust you. People have to be able to believe that you are capable of doing the thing you say. The advantage of this system is you get good leadership because you don't have any time for bad leadership. The United States has an institutional system of a constitution. We have a president who lasts 4 years. Can, in theory, that president be impeached? Sure. But whether they're good or bad, they are more than likely going to last 4 years. And then we have an election based on, do you like this person enough to want them to do it again for 4 more years? Remember, these people are so living on the edge that one bad decision could be catastrophic. So bad leaders get overthrown real fast. Remember that elder group? They'll be sitting there having their lunch and be like, their leader's kind of dangerous and could get us all killed. And then someone will say, maybe when he goes to sleep tonight, he shouldn't wake up. And then they have to find young men capable of doing it. But then someone will ask the women, well, what do you think? And bad leaders get overthrown quickly. And you have to go, well, how do you get a bad leader? Well, people think they're going to be a good leader, but until they have actually the pressure, until they have the job, you don't know. This happens all the time. People get hired for jobs. People think they're going to do well. People hope they're going to do well. And then they make decisions that go, ooh, I don't think I like that very much. Ooh. Or they're not capable of doing what they say. Or they think too much of the situation and the problems and they get frozen. Whatever it is. People may have liked them. They may have had charisma and the right kin, but not the moral fortitude. But you don't know if someone's going to be good or not at a job until they're really in it. So bad leaders get overthrown real fast. The disadvantage of this system, as we just kind of talked about, is there's lots of turnover. People get killed in battle. Bad leaders get overthrown. There's lots of turnover, and nobody knows who the next leader is going to be. Remember, there's no voting. There's no institution. There's no methodology to this. There are no clear successors. It could be a son. It could be a brother. It could be the wife. It could be the uncle. It could be the grandfather. It could be anybody. It could just be a whole different family. That's like, you guys have messed this up enough. Give it to us. So there's no clear successors, which means every time there's a new leader, there's a crisis, or there could be a crisis. So we have a situation that's really under pressure. These leaders have to perform. They have to get people to follow them, and they have to lead them well, because if they don't, everybody dies. So to summarize, leadership required military victory, or people died. And the leader would die too. The leader goes down fighting. If the leader somehow got captured, well, we talked about what happens. The leader's going to be murdered, right? Now, you can have female leaders. Remember, we never talked about gender. So you can have female leaders. But you have to execute her too. If you have a female leader, you can't just marry her off the side. She's going to lead a rebellion. She's a leader. So the leader required military victory, and if they lose, they die, and a lot of other people will die too. You need diplomacy. They have to be able to negotiate with other groups, avoid bad wars, avoid situations they might lose. They need world knowledge. Where is the food? Who are the enemies? Who are our friends? So these can't be ignorant people. They have to be willing to tap into and they can't be selfish. They have to be able to tap into the knowledge of the elders. They have to be able to have diplomacy, meet others, make alliances or friendships, but not be taken advantage of. They need to be able to incorporate new members without revolt. So if they win a military victory, they have to do it in such a way that the captured people, the captured women and children, will become new members without wanting vengeance later in life. Remember, everyone goes to sleep. So if you know how to slaughter a sheep for food, you can kill a sleeping person. So you need to be able to incorporate new members without there being a revolt. You need economic success, finding food, successful trade. Successful trade is you get what you want without having to give up too much. Like, a trade is still barter. There's not profit here. Each side is trying to get what they want and to give up as little as possible. So successful trade is everyone walks away going, okay, that was good. All right, we got what we wanted and we didn't have to give up too much. They need charisma, the continued loyalty of people over time. So they need to be able to do the person-to-person, face-to-face leadership. People have to like them and want to follow them. If at some point they don't, if they're like, oh, he's a jerk, that's the start of the end of one's leadership. And then there's constant activity, constant energy, constant decision-making. And every decision is important because it's the future of the group. So these are restless leaders. These are not leaders who could sit in a chair and just take their time and contemplate the world. They have to act. Energy. Bad leadership and failure equal the individual death and the removal or the extermination of the tribe. Individual death and removal. You are no longer going to be leader. Or your entire tribe gets destroyed. Successful leadership. The individual and the group survives. Keeps going until you either suffer a natural death, right? People do not live that long. If they live 40 years, that's pretty good. People get sick. People get diseases. They die. Retirement. They become one of the elders. And then they'll have a natural death. right? As an elder, one day they'll go to sleep. There you go, right? So success is you're not murdered by other people. So this is very stark. And the leadership is very challenging, energetic. It demands a lot. So what do we have? We have small groups, poverty, a reliance on traditions instead of written education, because we don't have any written, the tools for writing, the education for writing. The lack of stationary institutions, building locations. There's no place we can stay. What does this equal? A very personal style of leadership. People relied very heavily on the personal qualities of the leader. Good leaders are capable of good decisions, and people trusted their lives to these people. Bad leaders endangered everyone and had to be removed quickly. So there we go. Thank you. Be safe.